Okay, so we welcome Rustum Kozain. We've got a recording in progress. Can we just do an audio check? Rustum, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Okay, so let me just read for the record. Welcome Rustum Kozain, born in Paarl, schooled in Paarl, several years as a UCT student and later a teacher and lecturer. Has since been working as a freelance copy editor and proofreader, writer, translator. Some of his poems have been published in both South African and overseas magazines and journals, as well as having been translated into Dutch, French, German, Indonesian, Italian, and Spanish. Rustum has been the receiver or winner of some prestigious awards: the Olive Schreiner Award and the Ingrid Jonker Poetry Prize for his work, Discarding Life, and also the Olive Schreiner Award and the Herman Charles Bosman Award for his second compilation, Groundwork. The format we're going to follow is firstly introductions from the lovely group of people we have here, starting with Chris, and going around and introducing ourselves. Thereafter, Rustum, the stage belongs to Rustum, and who will present from a selection from his works, and thereafter discussion and question time. So can we have quick introductions? Firstly, maybe Isadora online.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm in Wellington, also here in New Zealand, and it's 8:30 at night. But I'm really looking forward to being here tonight. So lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Chris Vandel. This is a Cape Cultural Collective initiative. We've been going for a few months. We've got also have a broader poetry group, and we published 2 books, At Truth's Edge and Beyond Truth's Edge. And so this is a new initiative that we're doing for about 6 months, and then we'll reevaluate this process. We intend doing a small booklet, a mini booklet with this particular group. So we intend growing the poetic element of the Cape Cultural Collective, which is a broader organization with a choir, junior choir, a environmental group, and other activities. So a number of these members are members of the other activities of the Cape Cultural Collective. So welcome to everybody here today, and they'll introduce themselves.
Okay, I'm Trudy Wagenstroom, retired ex-trade unionist, and doing this writing as part of filling my day and to keep my mind occupied.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wafaa. I'm from the Fighting Equality Organization.
Michael Benjamin from CCC.
Atia Khan, freelance journalist.
Heidi Shooter, activist, lobbyist.
Speak louder, please. I think they must be able to hear us.
Hello, I'm Isabella Shooter. I'm the youngest here. I just want to come and read and write and share. And yeah, share my experiences in writing and other people.
Hi, I'm Andre Marie. I'm from Sydney's Radical Bookshop. This is our venue, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this morning. I haven't seen Rustum for quite a while, so hi, Rustum. And hi, Isadora.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me, Andre.
Okay, I'm Bruce Kadali from the Institute for African Alternatives. We partner and co-host with CCC and Surplus. I'm also an old associate of Rustum Kozain, so very, very happy to have him here. Okay. Okay, so Rustum, over to you.
Just a quick one.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
There's
Thanks,
another
Bruce and
introduction.
Andre.
There's another introduction.
Hi, it's Roseanne Kronenberg. And yeah, I'm with Bruce and I'm a poetry lover and I'm excited to be here. Hi, Rustum.
Excellent. Bruce and Andre, thank you for the invitation. I see some familiar faces as well. Atia, Michael, hi, long time. I'm going to read some poems. I chose these poems simply because for me they are the perfect examples of what I'm trying to do with poetry. Some of you, these poems are very old. They come from my two very old now books. Some of you will be familiar with them, but I thought I would read these particular poems just because for me they are the most successful examples of what I'm trying to do. I also don't like to do introductions to my poems because I don't like to preempt people's interpretations of these poems, but I'm of course very happy to talk about them after the reading. Okay. The first poem is called Talking Jazz, which strangely has not been anthologized in any South African anthologies about the use of jazz in poetry. In any case, Talking Jazz. It has an epigraph from a Galway Canal poem. The poem is called Memories of My Father, and the epigraph reads, "Can a father give his son what he himself never possessed, or lacks the courage to wish up from his own deprivation?" My father, I think at 35, had turned from nights he fingered the double bass in a trio or quartet, dressed in black tie to jazzify Nat King Cole, cover Dave Brubeck, the Blind George Shearing, and so on. Him on bass, a friend so dark they called him Gandhi on the Grand, and Icky Martinez brushing drums and cymbals. Somewhere, always some loose sax to be found. Nights they played the white hotels from Newlands to Sea Point. Would have played, I'm sure, for nothing, just so petrol was covered, drinks were free, and they could dance to the next band. My brother and me stayed home in Paarl in the big double bed with mother, who read magazines and smoked. To tease us, she kissed Clint Eastwood pinned inside her wardrobe door before turning to the sleep that brought father home and us to our beds. We wailed in betrayal. But I bet she kissed that cowboy as she needed dreams. Maybe Dad, king of the dance floor, had his dark hand like a tarantula on a sleek, pale shoulder blade, grand in a sequined green low-back gown. He didn't drink, but during break he'd sure dazzle even white women with his waltz or burning tango. Father stopped, he sometimes said, because the band now just played non-whites only hotels. Patrons too drunk and noisy, without class, who all the time just wanted langarm, a swing too brash to be jazz. It wasn't the band's choice to move. And Gandhi too refused, skulked back to Council House to purify himself on his old upright, crammed into the too small lounge. Space to roam he found in alcohol. Icky stayed on, renamed, regrouped. Ray Hendricks on electric organ, no Hammond this, but Yamaha. Bocky on some dull electric bass, and a whole troop of colored brass. New Year's Eve, the Drakenstein lounge bopped and crashed and blared as Icky popped on his monkey stool, thrashing pearl snare and toms bashing his Zildian ride hi-hat crash with 2 sticks hickory, chewed by the snare's rim. Not for father, these hijinks. And one Sunday morning, Desmond traffic cop dropped by with high-gloss sax, a joy of brass, levers, valves lying still as a robot in red velvet, while the bird roasted pot brown, mother knitted to approaching winter, and father tuned the carb on Desmond's car. Done. The men came into the 5x10 rectangle, our lounge partitioned by 6-inch foamelite in our rented servants' quarters. With nothing but scorn for Langarm, my father coaxed a murmur from his bass and hedged in young Desmond's barking sax, just to show jazz is knowing first about restraint. Then suddenly my eyes couldn't choose between his right hand tugging at the strings below or his left like a mouse up down the fretboard. As he flared, swung the sax, muled, Desmond spluttered, father crowed in laughter and said, "Come, what do you know about swing?" Even quick, the bass was gentle then, and sometimes sluggish, like a fish brooding under the skin, or sometimes like rows of sand left by wave upon wave of thick sound rounding in on us. And sometimes, just sometimes, the sax hit its high note, immaculate, free of time. Tea break, the sax in its bed, the bass sprawled to one side over the grey chair. Mother smiled and talked of dancing in those days before she had us children, when she went with to white hotels. But we were so young then, and things have changed. Father got up and held the bass for my brother, who stood on the chair, straining his small fingers on the taut snares. Me on my knees, fingering the dent stibbled in the worn linoleum by the footpin of my father's bass. Sorry, my poems are long, partly because I don't believe poetry is a casual Sunday afternoon after tea activity where you jot down 4 lines and then you have a poem. I mean, I think it's really hard work to get to the complexity of what human beings go through and live and experience. The next poem is Cape Town, Jerusalem. It has an epigraph from Edward Said's After the Last Sky. The epigraph reads, "Being on the inside is a privilege that is an affliction. Because our interior is always occupied and interrupted by others, we have developed a technique of speaking through the given, expressing things obliquely and so mysteriously as to puzzle even ourselves." Cape Town, Jerusalem. Often now I turn away from things, from jubilance save that which from a quiet word may grant my moment's wealth. A hometown's olive orchard that shivers in dusklight, the pit-pat as fruit fall free to the ground, or the homeless manic's quiet rage at grace when a shop owner hands him coffee. Most of all, I walk, so I may reach home and try to know myself, so I may turn to work, and turn more from the racial rage I need stole in myself, as I turn from the stone's articulate act and seek the sentence long enough to house my tribe, even as I know of neither's existence. These are rages which won't still, which need thought, but thought fans flames, and action in killing them kills the word. Yet in my silence there is this rage, still this rage. So I turn away from things and read, dip into books, wait thus for reports from my race, choose not speech, but sit in my silence, which broods to myself, a self at least, and wait, more thinking not of exile from, whether inside or out, but exile through, how inside the very head the tongue is exiled through itself, the tongue its own exile. And I turn more away from things, preferring solitude and work, to tongue at stories from their silent insides, like an orphan who in a new house senses an old taste, and quietly molds us a morsel that brings memory darting like a wasp in the head, then withdraws his tongue from probing, back to the mute bed, the civilizing cradle of the jaw. The next poem is called Kingdom of Rain, epigraph from Derek Walcott, from a poem called St. Lucy, and the epigraph reads, "From these I am growing no nearer to what secret eluded the children." Oh, I see you're having a healthy breakfast. Kingdom of Rain. Somewhere in some dark decade stands my father without work, unknown to me and my brother, deep in the pale winter and the school holiday. As the temperature drops, he, my father, fixes a thermos of coffee, buys some meat pies, and we chug up the Tweedskloof Pass in his old 57 Ford, where he whirls the mountain under cold cloud, tan and blue rock face bright and wet with rain. He wills these to open and let his children in, even as he apologizes, my strict and angry, fearsome father, even as he apologizes for his existence, then and there his whereabouts declared to the warden or ranger in government issue, ever present around the next turn or lazing in a jeep in the next lay-by. No, sir, just driving. Yes, sir, my car. At the highest point of the pass, we stopped to eat, and he, my father, the strict and angry, fearsome father, my father whom I love and his dark face, he pries open a universe that strangely he makes ours, that is no longer mine. Sorry, I'm getting a bit distracted by the movement on the screen. I'll just start over, okay? And maybe if I'm just trying to see whether I can. Okay.
Sorry, is there? Yeah, it's people entering.
It's just the movement of people on the screen, but it's okay. I'll just blank it out and I'll just start the poem over, okay? That's fine. Somewhere in some dark decade stands my father without work, unknown to me and my brother, deep in the pale winter and the school holiday. As the temperature drops, he, my father, fixes a thermos of coffee, buys some meat pies, and we chug up the Tweedskloof Pass in his old 57 Ford, where he whirls the mountain under cold cloud, tan and blue rock face bright and wet with rain. He wills these to open and let his children in, even as he apologizes, my strict and angry, fearsome father, even as he apologizes for his existence, then and there his whereabouts declared to the warden or ranger in government issue, ever present around the next turn or lazing in a jeep in the next lay-by. No, sir, just driving. Yes, sir, my car. At the highest point of the pass, we stopped to eat, and he, my father, the strict and angry, fearsome father, my father whom I love and his dark face, he pries open a universe that strangely he makes ours, that is no longer mine. A wily old grey baboon, well hid against salt and pepper rock, eyeing us. Some impossibly magnificent bird of prey rarely seen, racing to its nest as the weather turns. And we are up there close, I think, to my father's guard. The wind howling and cloud rushing over us, awed and small in that big car, swaying in the gale. Silence. A sudden still point as the universe pauses, inhales, and gathers its grace. Then the silent feather-like fall of snowflakes as to us it grants a brief bright kingdom unseen by the ranger. And for some minutes, a car with 3 stunned occupants rests on a mountain top outside the fast, ever-darkening turn of our growing up. Too brief to light the dark years, when I would learn how the bright, clear haunts of crab and trout where we swim in summer, now in winter a brown rage over rock, how mountain and pine and fynbos, or the mouse-drawn falcon of my veld, the one last mustard-dry kookamakranka of summer that my father tosses through the air to heat the ground and puff like a smoke bomb, and once, also in summer somewhere, a loquacious Piet my vrou, or the miraculous whirligig of waterhondjies streaking across a tea-colored pool, cradled by tan rock and green fern. My first and only owl, large and mysterious in a deep stand of pine. Big owl we never knew were there until you swooped away, stirred by our voices. How I too would be woken and learn that this tree and bird, this world, the earth, and this child's home already fell beyond these possessives. And how, once north through the dry bushman land with its black rock, over a rise in the road, the sudden green like the strange and familiar sibilants in Kaimus and Kakamas, and the rush of the guttural was the water over rock at Ograbis, the garib over rock at Ograbis where the boom swings down, the gatewatch tight-lipped as a sermon. Declared uncounters fall as you wave through a car filled with bronzed, impatient white youth, laughing at us, at my father, my silent father in whom a gaze grows distant, and the child who learns this pain past metaphor. How, like a baboon, law and state just turned its fuck you ass on us and ambled off. Whew. That's always a bit of a heavy poem to read.
I pondered on that one quite a few times last night and this morning.
Sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear that.
This year, I said I pondered on that poem and on the various themes of the environmental themes and so on. And in the Ograbis one, and apartheid rules and laws specifically, and the way people were treated. And the fact that you specifically, various elements of your poems, you refer to apartheid in very, sometimes subtle, but other times in like open kind of methods and so on. Yeah. The gatkant van the Bobbejaan or whatever, you know. Very, very descriptive, very kind of real, you know, in the sense, in terms of the experience and the kind of treatment meted out to people at the time.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about that afterwards. We can certainly talk about what you know, the craft or the technique in the poem. Yes. The next poem I would like to read is called Easter, and it has an epigraph. And it has an epigraph by Roland Barthes from A Lover's Discourse. And the epigraph reads, "In any man who utters the other's absence, something feminine is declared." Easter. The hours will not freeze. This morning you leave, cross the road, and are gone. Another hour passes. 6 more minutes. Then there is the wine from last night and the long day starting now. It all starts now. It starts with this glass of wine I pour at 11, or was it 10? Your smell on my mouth, on my hands, all of me I do not wash for days, but sit and drink myself back into the inescapable. You are in a bath somewhere, I believe, somewhere I understand, somewhere in a bath I believe I can imagine and understand, deep and warm. Somewhere in this washed, color-fast suburb, this impenetrable, unendingly quiet collection of snapshots and romance novels and dreams of another country. Somewhere for a moment you are in that bath I imagine like a god, but you are in a bath unknown to any god, or me, or to the late lone jogger in red shorts who crosses and crosses the span of my window. And now the day slows. Perhaps your cold tap trips. Maybe you lift your leg and place your right toe at its mouth to feel its chill. Maybe in the ache of a muscle, your body occupies itself with memory. Maybe it remembers mine. Or now your mouth is dry with cinnamon in a sudden addiction to spiced coffee, and it remembers mine. I don't know. I sit here and drink, and all over again I cook you a meal at midnight, open a second bottle, and lie next to you as if I were a woman. Or I am a moth, perhaps, or a river-long swathe of palmite, or the soft lick of water against the edges of a rock pool where the rare leopard drinks. Or the pied crow that with 3 flaps lifts, wheels, and flies off as if it was me finding finally the inescapable. Or was it the oak leaf that wakes to frost, the buzzing filament of a word, the suburb at rest after some resurrection that cannot know the infinite? A Spanish lament from a sunlit nave, the singer's red dress a pennant waving against dark stone blue sky. All these and also the unaccountable, as for one night the existence of everything troubled no one and nothing. Not you, not me, not the meniscus of wine. Here, now, in the sun-blessed room where some reordering begins, the cosmos closing in around the space where you stood or sat or lay, and air filling the emptying bottle, I sit here, drink, do not know, and stare until at dusk 2 Egyptian geese cross my window, heading home. And my neighbors, like me, grow drunk and make known to all their private quarrel, looking not for any infinite, but that of alcohol. He bays at her, she at him. They take it and take it. I sit here as it starts. It all starts here, now, as I grow drunk on something else. Whew. Okay, a short poem, and then I'll finish off with another longish poem. Okay, I don't know why my phone is making all this noise. Duolingo. Short poem. This is the sea, after a photograph by Victor Dlamini. There is that sea, deep sometimes as the heart at dusk, the shine on its face soon to fade. There is that caravel drifting in and all it brings, a load of good, and the bad unreckoned by the quartermaster. The homing birds that come or go, the sun that's set, now only a shade smudged by fog. From empty rooms, frosting windows, no one saw its dying spectacle. There is something of the sea, its cold and darkening deep, in the human heart, in me, that lies unfathomed beyond all sounding, that does not know its own dark treachery. The last poem is a companion piece to the previous poem about nature and apartheid. This is called Kingdom of Rain 2. I still dream of one day seeing, sniffing at the ground not far from me, softly grunting, a grizzly bear. Or sat down pulling at a vine of berries or a sapling, oblivious to me or not caring, or even knowing that I'm there, but with no malevolence, with nothing more than wanting to stare and wonder at it just being bare, and hope it will let me in. Not hunter, nor prey, somewhere in a North American jungle with God knows what else around us, but still just me, the trees, the bear. Or sitting by a river on watch with a bald eagle, guarding over time as time turns into dream. The sound only of water over stones, like a chuckle dim and soothing from a favorite uncle now gone, whom you tried too late to love back, and the memory of him fading, remorse too, trickling away like some river where I dream on watch with an eagle, which with a screech wakes itself and me, and maybe the bear is gone, and the eagle flaps away, and time returns, the insoluble matrix. Or maybe somewhere in a forest in India, crawling by some small, slow river, to lie on the bank and watch how, with a muted plash surprising for its size, a lone tiger breaks the algae on the water and swims to the other side. That I'd like to see, and see it rise with its wet fur onto the far bank, turn once, its whiskers dripping, to look at me here outside of history, in dream as in the idyll of this poem, and then slip away, gone through the green reeds. Many animals I dream of seeing. The coelacanth, which swims as if it walks, a mustang fast and dark against a swathe of green, some rare bird whose name I still must learn, a fox, a hedgehog, the astonished rattle, watch them from up close or hold them in my hand like once a baby octopus at Blombos in a 2-second spell and it was off. I would want them to know I mean no harm, but seek only these moments from their lives so I may sometimes become no more human. I'll tell them, tell the gecko too, and the salamander. Most of all, I dream of the sun on a rock by the Molenaars up in the Tweeskloof, and on the other side, by some small, still curve of the river, where from up a deep ravine forever in shade, a clear trickle runs in cold through fern and fynbos, where in a damp patch next to dark green moss, my father years ago may have pointed at a paw print. I dream of lying in the sun there and watching for that rare leopard to come and drink, to see its paws settle on stone, to see its shy head lowered between rising shoulders, to see the whole mechanics of leopard in its easy possession of what belongs to it. And all would be that leopard and me. The lap of its tongue, the soothing, chuckling water, and it may stop and raise its head, twitch its ears and squint, then return to drink, taking me in as if I belong, knowing that it's only me, it, the water, the sunless idyll, and the unseen, that this is only dream, and that I seek no deeper meaning, no encounter by which to turn this verse into a dispatch from some other kingdom or the failed settlements of philosophy. Yet, I want to let that leopard know that it is part of me, and I am part of it in all the ways that that could mean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience and attention.
Just to say something, Rustum and I did some audio tests, so everybody should be audible. But I'm just going to ask people to speak up a little bit. Besides, Isadora who's online, of course. So the floor is open for comments, expressions, responses to Rustum.
Just want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, you can be late and you identify yourself.
Okay, sorry, Melanie, I'm a teacher.
Rustum, can you hear?
No.
No, unfortunately, I'm struggling to hear. It's very soft.
Okay, my name is Melanie. I'm a teacher.
Hi, Melanie.
I am born and bred in Cape Town. And I just want to say thank you. And I think being here, I haven't written in probably 10 years, put the pen down. And I started just giving my life over to teaching. I worked for Neville Alexander for 12 years, secretarial, and yeah, thank you. I think this is a poem in itself being here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Melanie.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I must just, I mean, it's not evident in the poems, but I just want to point out that Neville Alexander, you know, lies behind some of the lines in Kingdom of the Rain. In Kingdom of Rain, you know, because I hear him specifically when I pronounce the word Garib. I hear Neville Alexander.
Yes, I recognize that as well. Yeah, definitely. Yes.
He was a great inspiration to many of us, yeah. But I don't want to sound like an old man.
Okay, good people. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Chris here?
Hi, Chris, yes.
Yeah. So it was with Malika and Globo's events many years ago that she organized in town that we met. I don't know, you remember Malika, yeah. In any case, so
yeah.
what we've done is we've discussed our format and our content and so on. And in the group, the group decided a couple of months ago that we will have two thematic areas. One was James's theme of age is a beautiful phase, and the other group was a younger, Isabella's group, a younger rap and rhyme group and so on. So it's a mix of those two groups, and then Russell with his haikus and so on. Yeah, so I wrote a few notes to the group. You know that I thought that we should focus on what is the storyline, what are the metaphors, And if you use rhyme, if you use contrast, the underlying messages, and then like a few kind of key issues. But for me, I look at your methodology of telling the story and using the longer style of poem, which I do like and I follow, and the focus on family, the strength of the family, the father figure, the mother figure, and the humiliation of the father as a figure. And then art and nature and culture, and daar op die berg in die Parel and so on. And then the rivers, the streams, where does that inspiration come from, you know? Die enige ding wat ek kon verstaan is, wat is 'n waterhoontjie? Die waterhoontjie, that's the only one that I couldn't, I'm not so sure whether it was a type
It's
of
a whirligig beetle.
Oh, well, okay.
It's a whirligig beetle.
Oh, okay. And then the bare kind of harshness. I like in the jazz thing, you know, the bass speaks, the strum of the bass and the musical instruments, but also the late night kind of jazz gigs, and then the trip back to Paul must have been far, hard and long, and then the contradictions of, do we only play for white people? Speel ons net langarm of speel ons regte jazz, you know? That kind of using the various experiences of people and the various elements of people. The mountain, the fynbos once again, and the nature, the art of how nature speaks to you, what the mountain represents, what nature represents to you, and to the environment and to those interacting with the environment. Yeah, so I picked up on those kind of themes. They are deeper, and I like the thing of there are parallel stories within the poems. There's the underlying and the undercurrent of the stories within the poems. Yeah.
Not sure.
Can you hear me? Russell Dudley, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I think I can.
Okay. It's just a simple question. I noticed that you write without adjectives. Is it a conscious thing?
Sorry, I didn't get your first name.
Russell Dudley.
Russell. That sounds like a very pointed question because I am I'm infamous for telling people to avoid adjectives and adverbs, for telling creative writing students to avoid adjectives and adverbs because they are like, I don't know, they kind of create instant emotional responses in your readers. So I'm laughing because it almost sounded like you were a plant trying to jibe me about, you know, an old hobby horse of mine.
I heard it for the first time, honestly, with Salman Rushdie describing his master classes. And he was saying that you first need to be able to tell your story without adjectives and adverbs, indeed, for it to be compelling.
Yes, so for me the thing is, I mean, it's a very complicated thing to explain. But for me the thing is, when I am writing something, when I am moved to write a poem or whatever, it means I want to communicate, you know, the emotional force of an experience to my reader. Now, the way in which now there's an easy way I can do it. I can load the piece of writing with adjectives and adverbs, but they kind of like the E numbers in sweets and fast food, isn't it? Because they create instant emotional responses in the reader. Okay, and it's almost like you are rubbing the reader's nose into what you are trying to say. So my thing is to try and invest that emotional force of the experience, to invest that in your verbs, to try and find the verbs that will have a shadow of the meanings that you're trying to get out of that you would otherwise use adverbs or adjectives for. You know, I mean, it's basically, if I can say the sun is hot without using the word hot, okay, then I am recreating the experience for my reader rather than telling the reader the sun is hot. So it's that kind of, how can I say, it's that kind of effect that I think, I certainly do it, but I also think it's a better way to arrive at the expression of an emotional experience than using adjectives and adverbs. I don't know whether that answers your question, Russell, but yeah, I mean, I'm with Salman Rushdie on it, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, writers, of course, roll their eyes because they go, but I mean, you know, I know all these words, why can't I use them? And it should be easy for me. And I'm saying don't take the easy route out. Adverbs and adjectives are easy routes. Instant emotions.
Just for the purposes of Rustum and the recording, could you just say your name when you...
Okay, it's Trudy, Rustum. The father figure seems to be quite prominent in your poem. That's just a comment. And then I wondered, why would white women be seen as exceptional? Like in the Talking Jazz, he said, he sure dazzle even white women. And then I liked the chuckling of the water.
I mean, it's just a political, you know, the poem is set, you know, my father would have been moonlighting as a musician in the late 60s, in the early 70s. You know, that's before many of us had a developed political consciousness. So it's just, you know, putting a social meaning to a particular moment in the poem, you know, but I mean, I guess framing it as a societal thing, you know, and that, I mean, I'm not going to deny that people aspired to whiteness in South Africa in the 60s and 70s, so it's part of that, you know.
No?
Oh, hi, my name is Jill. Yeah, no, I just enjoyed your poems. I came in a bit late.
Thanks.
And I just love the narrative, just the storytelling. I get a sense of that nature is cathartic, but it's also an escape for you from maybe in these poems from the reality, from harsh reality. Probably I see reflections here, especially the Cape Town, Jerusalem. But I'm getting that because we had nothing else, but we had nature and we were free to go there. It was free for us. Although, yeah, you know, I mean, there were those points, checkpoints, you know, that uncomfortable areas of the white kids. I mean, I come from that era also. Maybe they were just having fun, but we were so self-conscious of the differences and, you know, the freedom that they had in comparison. So I really could, you know, connect with this poem. And yeah, I just loved your imagery. You know, you just took me right way up on those rocks and all those places we actually we feared to go. We went there, you know, we weren't allowed to go there, but we had that. And we still do have this land, or at least we do. So yes, I also enjoyed the others, but I think my focus was more on that one. And yeah, I love your poem.
Thank you. It's good. It's good to hear. It's good to hear that those poems speak to people. You know, because especially the first Kingdom of Rain is about the child becoming aware of. You know, I mean, South Africa is many areas of South Africa is like paradise. You know, and the poem is about the child's awareness that this paradise, you know, has some weird stuff going on in it, you know, vis-a-vis apartheid, of course, you know. But yeah, I mean, it is about a child and you know, how the father and the child, you know, it's got to do with this love of nature that gets frustrated by apartheid, basically.
There's a line there in that second stanza that says, and turn more from the racial rage, I need still in myself. So I'm not quite sure of the still. Is it still as if continuing, or is it still as if in peace and, you know, that plateau? So can you just inform me? Or is it just that? Yeah, because I'm picking up both.
I mean, it's deliberately ambiguous.
Yes,
it's deliberately ambiguous. Yeah.
And those scars, no matter how they're there, they're deep.
But you're referring to a different poem now. It's Cape Town, Jerusalem.
Yes,
but Cape Town, I mean, Jerusalem.
But I'm just saying that for me, that's still there. Because I just think of that. If there's one thing I can do for my kids is, you know, to take them there. And when we get to those places, you know, of nature and solitude, somehow I'm always reflective about how, the past takes me back. Anyway, that's...
Hi, it's Melanie again. I hope I don't talk too much.
Melanie?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I like the color reference because I grew up in the Cape Flats and my life is all about color. You know, when I asked my mother, you know, I'm gonna sound radical now. We all probably have the same experience. Why was my grandmother dark skinned, very dark skinned, and she couldn't tell me any answers, you know. So I always say it was like a black chicken that laid a white egg type of thing, you know. My brother was also white with green eyes. So when I went to UCT, I saw white, you know. So my life revolved sort of around color. And I write a lot about my mother that was basically robbed. Also apartheid reference, she went to Paketberg where she was shunned out of Cape Town, but she had all this big ancestral surname that actually, you know, did business with Cecil John Road. So because of her color, she was white skinned. She had to be shunned to, for some reason, to Paketberg. And her mother couldn't even stay at those big houses, plots, whatever. So yeah, it's difficult to sort of write about that, I think. But I am doing just that. I don't know if you have thoughts on that. Thank you.
You know, I mean, it would be difficult. I mean, it's difficult for me to talk about how to go about writing about such topics for you without seeing your work, obviously, seeing your writing. But I can give you some tips. You know, the thing is, I mean, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, first of all, to define poetry. Okay, because there isn't a template or a what to say this is how you go about writing poetry. Okay, no one can teach you that. Okay, but there are moments where you can know that the language that you are using is somehow different from the language in which you and I are now speaking. This is ordinary language. We're just having a conversation, etc., etc. There is something in poetry where the language just lifts away from the everyday and how we talk to each other. Okay. Now, recognizing that or knowing whether you have it inside you or whatever, I mean, that's a personal thing. You know, no one can tell you you have. Well, I mean, people can tell you you have it or you don't have it. But I'm now just talking about when you're starting to write, when you're trying to write poetry. Now, one of the tips I can give you when you're talking, when you're wanting to write about things that are difficult, where the emotions, you know, when you talk about writing about your mother or about your mother's experiences, when the topic is very difficult and complicated, you know, you can sit down and write and pour out your emotions and everything. Okay. That in itself is not going to make a poem or the poem. Okay. You have to figure out, how do I, you know, I'm going through this experience. This experience means so much to me. Now, how do I make that, the telling of that experience, as forceful for the person who's going to read it? Okay, now I've spoken earlier about adjectives and adverbs and avoiding those because they kind of make things instant. Now, one way of doing it is to actually write down what it is that you want to say in the poem, not the poem itself. You know, now you've poured out your stuff. Now you write down, I want to say XYZ about my mother's experiences going, why she went to Piketberg. She went to Piketberg because this happened in Cape Town, that happened in Cape Town, this is what they did, this is how they forced her to go to Piket. You write all those details down. Now, somewhere in there, as you're writing, it's not 100% guarantee, but somewhere in there may be triggers, there may be words, there may be phrases or expressions where it suddenly lifts away from the reality. And then you can go, I'm going to use this line in my poem. Okay. So you try and write it out as prose. You don't try and write poetry. Okay. That's something that people also often make a mistake. They sit down and they deliberately want to write something that sounds like poetry. Don't do that. Just write down your story. Try and put your emotions in that story as you're writing it down. Write it out in prose, somewhere in there, you know, because the more you write, the more ideas come to you. And somewhere in there, you will find material to then use as the poem itself. And the one thing, you know, people often think about poetry as this thing that you write in a riddle form, okay, as a puzzle that someone else needs to puzzle out, etc. That's not actually the truth. But it is that in poetry, you also don't say things as directly, or in some poetry, you don't want to say things as directly as possible, you know. So writing out the story, why my mother went to Piketberg, may give you, you know, you don't have to use all the information. Okay, so the poetry is about striking the balance between giving your reader enough information, but also not rubbing the reader's nose in the information. So that's like a tip I can give you. But this, I haven't seen what you have written or anything, so I can't give you more specific stuff. But that's just a trick to get. It helps also if you're blocked. If your poem's not making sense, you can't go forward. Sit down and write. This is what I am trying to say in this poem, and write out what you are trying to say. But you must always remember that what you are trying to say is not always the thing that you end up saying in a poem. So Cape Town, Jerusalem, for instance, was a poem that started out literally as a letter that I wanted to write to Edward Said when I had heard that he had been diagnosed with cancer, he was dying, etc. I wanted to write him literally a letter to say, this is where I grew up, this is how we understand the Palestinian struggle, etc., etc., etc. And I started writing, and it just didn't work. And somewhere in that writing, this poem came out, which is a completely different thing from a letter to someone you don't know at all, And it also is obviously not directly related to Palestine, but it uses the idea of Jerusalem as this yearned for higher state of existence, as in the biblical Jerusalem, and try and say things about Cape Town, but it's very obscure. So I'll leave it at that point. But I hope that's helpful, Melanie.
Thank you. It's amazingly helpful. Thank you very much.
Young Isabel. How do you know you're the youngest here? Okay, Isabel.
Yeah, I was reading I think I resonated a lot with the Cape Town, Jerusalem. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear, yeah.
To me, mainly the end where you said, wait, how inside the very head, the tongue, it exhales through itself, the tongue, its own exhale. I took that more as, like sometimes you can't speak up, like I feel like it's always important to speak up. And there's a lot of times where advocating for something doesn't go your way, and where you try to help yourself, help your others around you. And it happened to me at school where I tried going on committees and trying helping change rules. They were in a school that only started teaching English and allowing like more racial groups to come in. But just a few years ago, it's bizarre to have a lot of rules that, so I don't know, oppress black kids and colored children. So to me, this was having to sit in silence, and I think a lot of us, like we don't try to talk as much. We don't try and go out there where like the older generation was so loud, expressive. They were out there. They were in the streets shouting, and it just sometimes, it just angers me sometimes that it's seen as embarrassing to not talk about these things, but we should just keep quiet. It doesn't matter. It's the past. But I think, this is the poem that resonates with me the most. So, and I just wanted to know if that was your way of like saying like that silence is like difficult to like overcome. I don't know.
The thing is that this poem is actually far more complicated than I myself, what I'm trying to say in this poem is more complicated than I can simply say that this is the meaning of the poem. And the reason why that is so is because what I'm trying to say about Cape Town, South Africa, my own growing up, Jerusalem, Palestine. I'm obviously drawing parallels between the two places. Okay, that's the title. But what those parallels is, I mean, it's all like I can't put it exactly into words. And the poem is partly about how I cannot say exactly what it is that I want to say about these two places and how they may be connected. So that's why that epigraph from Edward Said is there, you know, where he says, we say things so mysteriously as to puzzle even ourselves. But that idea of the tongue being exiled through itself, some of it has to do with not being able to say things outright because of, you know, whether it's self-censorship or whether you go against the grain of what the general social feelings are. You know, part of that has to do with holding your tongue in a way. You know, so I don't know whether that connects with what you were curious about the meaning. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I can't exactly say what it is that I wanted to say. And so I wrote this poem trying to say what it was that I couldn't say. Yeah.
Yeah, Rustum, can you just go to your silence, you're going back into yourself. I'm not sure whether it links to this particular point, but just how you use silence for as your own golden space. You're holding your own space in relation to your silence at times.
Yeah, because I mean, like often you just feel that whatever you want to say or have to say, I don't know. I mean, you know, I mean, it's very difficult for me to kind of explain exactly, you know, the use of silence in the poems. You know, I don't want to use the term a safe space, you know, because I mean, maybe a contemplative space, maybe a space where you realize that the rest of the world is fucked and you're the only sane one. I don't know. And so you remain quiet because, you know, yeah, whatever you say might be seen as madness or something. So you just stay quiet. But I know that I use the word silence in several poems and they signify certain things, you know, some form of existential peace, I suppose. But I, you know, and yeah, I mean, some people may call it a safe space. I just don't like the term safe space.
Russell?
I would just like to, Russell Dudley, I would like to link to the idea of silence. It's what the Catholics do. Sometimes they say things without, they don't say something, but they actually mean what they say. So there is a way of keeping it silent and actually conveying meaning. But I just want to ask, recently I've been told that, look, when you get to my age, and it's like over 60, of course you observe things, but because of the breadth of your life experience, you read things into what you observe. You're able to draw certain conclusions, you have certain insights and so on. So to what extent is your craft influenced by the passing of generations? And I noticed that, like the others, that your father is an important cue. To what extent do you distinguish between your father as being an older person and yourself as a younger person to derive meaning, insight and all those kinds of elements in your poetry? Does he help you? Is he a little guardian angel or?
No, no. I mean, I think I don't. I don't know. Other people maybe better placed. I mean, there are many. I mean, like many men my age, I had a very problematic relationship with my father. And I was also for a long time estranged from my family. So many of the poems that I had written, I mean, like these poems were written where I feel the absence of my father, because I'm estranged from my family. I'm not in physical contact with him, with my family. So these poems are basically written as kind of substitutes for that absence in a way. So yeah, so I had a problematic relationship with my father. I had a problematic relationship with people older, with older generations, with my parents' generations, obviously, as happens between generations. I was born in the 60s. I was part of the generation that went on national school boycotts in the 1980s, etc. Because we believe that our parents were too quietist and were too accepting or weren't doing enough, etc., etc. So in terms of that, but there are poems where I now also recognize that I am like my father, for whatever sturm and drang existed between my father and I. I mean, I'm like him. I'm my father's son. I mean, yeah. My favorite jazz musician is a bassist, for instance, so, or was a bassist. Yeah.
Is it the same rage that Dylan Thomas felt when he wrote to his father?
I don't know. I mean, I know a few of the greatest hits of Dylan Thomas. I don't really know enough of his work or enough about him to be able to compare my rage to his rage. But yeah.
Rage Against the Dying of the Light.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that poem when I was a young man, but
it was about that conflict between the father and son. No, the poem is about that.
Sorry, what was that?
The poem, Dylan Thomas' poem, is about the conflict that he had with his father. It's also something that he wrestled with.
Maybe I should read that poem again and see whether I've resolved my issues with my father.
Folks, more questions, comments?
Just a comment, Michael Benjamin here. Yeah, so
Hi, Michael.
To the jazz poem, which reminded me of another one that you did, where you in fact asked whether you could play lingers to your father so that he could hear.
Yeah.
And
where my father and I are smoking a joint together.
Correct, yes, correct. And I thought, okay, that is what the first one reminds me of. And also an attempt to try and I don't know, I got the sense that you were trying to get that relationship on a better footing. I think your father had passed at that stage.
Yes.
Yeah. So trying to still work through this difficulty in the relationship.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of the, because of the jazz, it's one of the favorite poems that I have. And that
but resolving that conflict in the poem after he has passed. So the poem becomes like utopian in a way.
Yeah.
Because that's a space where, what do you call it? You know, it's both cathartic and, well, I guess maybe it is a safe space.
Yeah.
It's both cathartic and a safe space.
Okay, so we're approaching the end of the session and the time that I've given Rustum. Chris wants to make a few final comment, and then I'll do a thank you. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, I want to go back to your age, the rage, and the father figures. So James was one of our father figures. Maar hy's ook 'n ou toppie. So we could identify with James. James moved with us, but James was prior to us in the
James Matthews.
Yeah, you know, and he's a totally different kind of character. And then he was cry rage, you know, he was raging, shall the blood be spattered on the pavements again, and so on and so on. And then he would be there at Sinton High and with us in the streets and so on and so on. And then he comes down to age is a beautiful phase. And then he like and then he stops drinking and he stops all his nonsense. And then he writes like this kind of collected kind of age is a beautiful phase, praising aging, and becoming more calm in his poetic expressions, or his poetic realities, as you would call it, and so on. Yeah. So in comparatively, in terms of the various kind of phases of adulthood, of father figures, of struggle father figures, of just how do you identify with a James? Yeah.
I don't quite get your question. How do I identify with the James?
The rage within James, that kind of rage, the struggle kind of rage, your struggle kind of rage. Yeah. Do you identify with James's kind of struggle rage as an older kind of person and father figure, and then he calming down in his latter kind of stages?
Yeah, I mean, you know, James Matthews' poetry wasn't one of the big inspirations I had as a teenager in the 80s. You know, there was just, it's not, I mean, you know, I was more into, like, you know, Donald Perenzi was a poet that whose stylistics I was more interested in, rather than the frankly speaking, the very flat protest stuff that James was doing. You know, he wrote some interesting short stories, though. Whether I would ever stop raging, I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe when I'm 80. I mean, I can't talk. You know, James is now well into his 80s, if he's not 90 already.
90s.
You know, maybe when I reach that age, I may become more peaceful and placid. But no, I don't. But then again, you know, our rages, you know, we express our rages differently. Let's put it that way. You know, I don't think, you know, maybe James has outraged himself because of the way in which he expressed his rage, you know, and now he's got no more rage. You know, but
before closing, Isadora online has been very quiet. Isadora, is there anything you want to say before?
Well, so it's Isadora here. I had a quick chat with Rustum before you guys came into the room, and I'm not familiar with Rustum's poetry. I'm from his generation, but I almost cried as he was delivering his poems. It just took me right back to Cape Town. I've been away 20 years, and I'm not a student of writing, but at my age now, I want to put together my biographical memoirs. I've had a very colorful life up to this stage, and I haven't really studied a poem since I was at UCT in the English literature class where I thought they mangled poetry. And I wish Rustum was my lecturer. They just made me hate poetry. They mangled it. You know, Rustum says, don't make a riddle out of a poem. And they wanted you to decipher the poem. Every single word you had to break down. It just killed my love for poetry. And later, as a teacher at Belgravia High School, I taught poetry, but I taught it very differently. So the poem that I immediately, you know, identified with, which spoke to me, was the talking jazz poem. I did a B Mus at UCT, and I talk, my rage goes into the piano. I'm a pianist. And I could picture Rustum, the two brothers, one on his knees, one who was tall enough, one on the chair, and I could almost hear the double bass music. My brother is a double bassist in the UK, and I could hear the double bass music as Rustum was reading the poem. And when he read the nature poem, as a young teacher, I was so enraged in the apartheid classroom. I rushed up Table Mountain after school and lay on a rock in the sun. And that was the place I felt free, the freedom that Rustum spoke about, the rage of his father. My father was enraged. He was a freedom fighter. But I loved my father, and I call myself, I am my father's daughter. He lies buried in Genadendal in Culloden under the tree, under the mountains there in the shade of the trees. So I'm dying to put together my autobiographical memoirs, and I'm so glad that I met Rustum and all of you here tonight. You sound like students of literature. And I'm impressed with all your questions that you posed to Rustum. But I'm going to continue my conversation, hopefully with all of you in the future, but with Rustum here in New Zealand. And so thank you, Rustum. It really spoke to me tonight, and I was quite homesick for Cape Town. I've only been back once. I think it's time for a visit back. And everybody there, it was lovely to hear all your voices, the accent of Cape Town. My sister has just traveled to Australia. She lectures at the University of Cape Town. And she said, Cape Townians don't know how lucky they are to have the mountains, the sea. She said the Aussies call, she went on a running trail. She came to a writing conference here. And she said they've got little hillocks. Cape Town has the mountains. She's a communications lecturer at UCT. She's written a few books, and she's an academic. And so everything that was spoken about here tonight, there was so many takeaway lessons. Thank you, everybody. It was wonderful to be here. I've spoken too much.
Well, it's always good to hear when people say, you know, when people describe how my poetry speaks to them. It's always good to hear that. It's always good because
not using adjectives. I learned about that, and using verbs and not adverbs and adjectives. There were so many takeaway lessons, and also the contributions that the younger people in the room made about what they struggle with in writing, the whole issue of race and so on. There's just so much to talk about. I wish it was a longer session. Thank you.
Okay, with awareness of the time difference, I'm gonna bring this session to a close by profusely thanking Rustum Kozain. I get a very keen sense on this side of great appreciation in this room, Rustum, for the session that you've so kindly and generously done for this group. So, and just to comment that, you know, there are other members of the group, and this audio recording I shall make available, this Zoom recording, to the other members of the creative writing community that we are engaging with. So thanks very much, Rustum. You may now go into the nightclubs in Auckland. I know you can't wait to get
No, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that. You know, but yeah, it is, I mean, at my age, 9:30 p.m. is bedtime. There will be no night clubbing. No.
Okay. All right, give Rustum a wave, everyone. and Isidore.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you
Nice to
very
see you,
much.
Atia and Michael.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good night,
Bye.
Andre.
Good night. Good morning. Good night.
Isadora, thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Isidore. I'll hear from you
Fantastic.
independently.
Thank you, Rustum. Bye-bye.
Okay.
I'll break them, please.
Sorry, I just want to find, is there any vegetarians here? I'm just going to go out and buy some pizza. I know this halal, you know. Anybody who's vegetarian? Okay, all right. So just you can break off. Sure. They're going to break that anyway. So you can, as a break, you can go and make yourself some coffee inside there if you want to.